Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show. Today, we're going to be discussing the sad and tragic murder of Shanquella Robinson, a 25-year-old young woman from Charlotte, North Carolina. We're going to be discussing the Mexican and U.S. laws that govern prosecuting her killers. Stay tuned right after this. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Chloe Corbett, also known as the Duchess of Justice, and with me I have
Attorney Augustus Corbett, aka the Minister of Justice.
we are the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every week, we provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to help you defy this unjust legal system. And on today's show, like I said at the top, we're going to be discussing Shanquella Robinson. Dad, this is just something that has touched me significantly because I see myself in Shanquella. According to friends and family, she was a kind and loving young woman. She was an entrepreneur. She was from North Carolina, which is where we're from. And just thinking that, around this country, millions of people celebrated with their families Thanksgiving, and Shanquella was not there to celebrate with her family. It's just tragic. With that, how are you doing today?
Well, with that, I'm doing okay. I too have been really seriously struck by Shanquella's murder, and because you can relate to it, I can relate to it as well as your father. You know, just
Yeah.
just uh, just imagining, what how we would be dealing with this right now. God forbid if this were to happen to either of our two children, and we are just heartbroken and saddened that it happened to Shanquella's parents and family and friends, and we send our heartfelt, deep, sincere condolences, and we pray that we say something today that will prevent this from happening to another family.
Yes, I agree. Can I get a mic check? I just want to make sure that my mic is good. Everyone can hear me. There's no issues. We're live right now, people. So we're just making sure that everything is good. If y'all hear me clearly, just write it down in the chat, please. Please let us know.
Okay, let me check the systems, make sure everything is going well.
Check one, check two, check one, check two.
Everything seemed to be going well. Let's see. Uh, I think that fixed it. Try again.
Hopefully, this is good.
Yeah, you all let us know if that fixed whatever you all were hearing. All right. So how does it sound now?
Someone, please let us know.
Well, go ahead, Chloe, and we'll move on. I believe that fixed it.
So, for those who are not familiar with Shanquella's murder and what happened, this is just a general overview. Like I said at the top of the hour, Shanquella, she was a 25-year-old young lady. She traveled to Mexico last month with some so-called friends for a vacation. Less than 24 hours at her arrival at the resort where she was staying at in Mexico, she was dead, and there's now been a month-long um, fight for justice on behalf of her family, and it's been
Well,
out in the public now for a couple weeks.
and we do have a timeline that we can put
Yeah,
up.
Yeah, we're gonna go in detail the timeline. That's
Okay.
just a very general overview. There's a lot of information and facts that'll come out. So I guess we can start from the top.
Okay. Well, did you finish your intro? I just wanted folks to know that we are going to look at a fairly detailed timeline. As much information that has been provided by the Mexican authorities in the family. Basically, the FBI has provided very little information.
Yeah, yep. That's the general overview. We're also gonna discuss, extradition. What is femicide? That is what the Mexican authorities are charging a person associated with Shanquella with, and some other topics related to kind of the international relationship between Mexico and US and the authority that both Mexico and the US has to prosecute these individuals.
Yeah,
So
and
we'll
another
discuss
thing
that.
too, you folks should really, really pay very close attention because at the end of the broadcast, we're going to share some tips with you to try to help you from becoming a victim like Shanquella. Um, Look, when you travel out of the country, things are very different. We Americans are used to certain constitutional rights, certain civil rights, certain criminal rights. All of that ends at the border. So you got to be very thoughtful and circumspect when you travel outside of this country. So we're going to offer you some tips and suggestions at the very end of this broadcast.
Stay tuned for that.
Okay, so we'll start the timeline here, Chloe. I hope you can see it okay.
Yes. So October 28th, 2022, Shanquella and some other parties, they arrived to Cabo San Lucas in Mexico. Um, and I was listening to a lot of interviews from Shanquella's parents' dad, and this was supposed to be a celebration of a friend of her friend's birthday. So Shanquella's friend invited her to celebrate one of his friends' birthdays. And so they were there for a birthday celebration. They were going to be there for a few days, and it was supposed to be, a festive time. So, as we all know, tragically, that did not happen.
And at the bottom of the screen here, we have um, pictures of the six friends. We have pictures
So-called
here.
friends.
Thank you, because absolutely the so-called friends here. Yeah, I don't know their names. They haven't been identified in the media yet. Um, but no, these were not friends based on the way Shinquella's life ended.
And her father told CNN that the friends she was with were friends or acquaintances from her time when she went to Winston-Salem State University, which is a college out of North Carolina we're very familiar with. Is that a HBCU?
Yes, Winston-Salem State
Yeah.
University is an HBCU that's located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, um, right down the street from A&T, where I went to college. So yeah, we have a kindred spirit with the Winston Salem State University students, alumni, etc.
Yeah. And also to that at this time, her mom told media outlets that the last time that her parents spoke with Shanquella that they were having a meal prepared by a private chef. And that was almost immediately after they arrived and checked in at the hotel.
All right, so let me go back to the timeline. But this is the next day. You're still on the first day, October 28th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this timeline is going to walk us through most of the details, but any of the intricate details, yeah, please fill us in. But so far, we know that she arrived in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico on October 28th. And she did something as soon as she arrived that I want to highlight. Okay, I want to highlight this. As soon as she arrived, she called her mother, or shortly thereafter. She spoke to her mom. As a parent, that is so important. When my two children travel out of state, anywhere, certainly out of the country, I want to know where they are at pretty much at all times because of situations like this. And so she did a very smart thing. She called mom shortly after arriving and touching down. And she didn't do that because her mom is controlling her life. Clearly, she was an adult. She did that, Chloe, because out of wisdom, she knew she was in a foreign country and she needed to check in with the home front so that they would know pretty much what's going on with her as she travels internationally. Very smart. And I wanted to highlight that as a parent.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we're going to discuss at the end of this broadcast about what people need to do when they're traveling internationally. And that's making sure that people back home, family members and loved ones, know where you're traveling to and to check in just in case something like this tragic.
Well, I say do it not just internationally. Chloe, you froze. I don't know what happened, but not just internationally. Also, when you're traveling out of state, and
Yeah,
sometimes if you're just out of town, I mean, it's just smart.
yeah, it
It's
is.
just smart to let the home front know where you are, and it's a smart thing to do, and it could have very well helped move forward the investigation of Shanquella's life because her mom was abreast of what was going on, her family.
Yeah,
All right, so back to the timeline. All right, October 29th. And by the way, isn't she beautiful? Wasn't she a beautiful young woman?
she was beautiful, um, talented, a businesswoman, all of that.
She actually graduated from Winston-Salem State University, I read.
Yeah, she was just starting really her adult life, getting into where she would be heading, and she had a bright future ahead of her. So this is just it's just so tragic that okay, so up here we have the next day, the hotel calls for a doctor. And I have here, according to the Charlotte Observer too, that it was shortly after 2 p.m. when the doctor arrives to the hotel. Okay. And the doctor finds Shanquella with vital signs, but he wants to treat her at the hospital. However, the group of quote unquote friends that she was there with, they request that he continue to treat her at the hotel. He tried to do so, but he couldn't do it with an IV. That is suspicious to me. So you have her so-called friends not wanting her to get all of the medical attention and care that she needs, but instead keep her at the resort? Come on now. That's the first suspicious thing that stood out to me as we're walking through this timeline.
Yes, and if all of the group members participated in that decision, that could implicate all of them criminally. That could make them accessories after the fact because and other things. I mean,
Yes.
failure to render aid. I mean,
Yes.
they called 911, the doctor came, but then they interfered with the doctor's ability to provide necessary medical care by, insisting from what we're being told that he treat her at the hotel instead of at the hospital where he would have had access to all sorts of medical equipment and instruments that, maybe could have saved her life.
Yeah. And when he got there and he saw her, he saw that she was unable to communicate, um, that she was stable, but she was dehydrated. She was not in a good state. And there's a video circulating around that is very, very hard to watch, but it's all over social media. We have watched it to discuss this video today. It's extremely sad, but at some point within on the October 28th and then the 29th when this doctor arrived, um Shanquella's parents believe that that's when that video of Shanquella being violently beaten almost to death was shot with between that time, so less than 24 hours. But it's very, very hard to watch. She doesn't put up a fight in the video. In fact, one of the people filming, I think the guy filming, one of her so-called friends says, "Shanquella, fight," or something like that. She's like, "No." And dad, I just watched an interview with her father, which was it's been so heartbreaking listening to her parents' interview. But he just did an interview with News Nation, and he said that he taught Shanquella not to fight. He taught Shanquella to love and respect everyone, and he taught her to be kind to everyone, and that's not the type of person that she is. So when he saw that video, it was beyond heartbreaking. And keep in mind, this is his only child, and she was his only daughter. So it was extremely, extremely heartbreaking to watch him talk about it and the type of person that she was.
Well, I have taught you all the very opposite in terms of fighting. If your life depends on it, you got to fight. You got to fight. You can't, you can't, you can't just not fight because the other person, you don't know what that other person's intention is. So you got to fight. You just can't let someone, just take your life. I completely respect what he taught his daughter, and we've taught you all the same thing: respect everyone, love everyone. But there comes a time where Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says there's a time to fight. There's a time to fight, there's a time to kill. So there are times where you have to, otherwise, someone could do you some serious damage. Um, and it's called self-defense, and the law protects your right to protect yourself.
And
So
others and property here in Texas.
yes, exactly. It's one of the reasons why I have insisted on you being armed,
Yeah. Yeah.
and have taken you to the range,
Mhm.
to the gun range, and have gotten you familiar with guns, because you have to defend yourself. You have to fight back. Now, that in no way, is to blame Shinquella for her death, because she shouldn't have had to fight back. No one should have been beating her like that. We saw that video and we decided not to play it. It's just too awful to play it. Um
And I
so
think what her dad may have been saying too is because we know all what the media has about black people, especially young black people. I think he may have been trying to say, look, we didn't raise her to be ratchet. Let me just, she wasn't a ratchet young lady. She was kind, she was loving, she was an entrepreneur. So maybe that's the what he was trying to get the media to see while they're discussing her case. And we don't know at what point that video was shot. She could have been beaten for hours before, or and then she was in a state where she couldn't even fight back. So because there was other video I saw where she was laying down in a bed, and you can hear a person on the video saying, "We got a dead body," something like that. So I mean, we don't know how long she took a beating before that video was shot too. She may not even have even been in a state to be able to fight back.
yeah, the clip that I saw, I mean, she was able to fight during that period, and I saw where she just basically sat down, and this girl. just kept beating her. And that's when the guy said, I think something to the effect of, Shanquella, can you at least just fight back? And I heard someone say no. Um, but yeah, there are times where you have to fight. I mean, folks may not want to hear that. That may not be pleasant to hear, but it's life. It's reality. And we're not going to get up here and lie to you. This is a big, bad, cold, cruel world that we live in. And that doesn't mean if she fought back that it would have saved her life, but at least if you do, it increases your chance of being able to survive. And then what's just as reprehensible is whoever was videotaping this and the other people who were around didn't step in and stop this madness.
It is. I believe they should be charged as well. Accessory in the fact, aiding in her murder. Um, I read also a news report that a friend was on FaceTime watching the beating.
Wow.
Even he should be charged, I believe. And he came out on social media saying, he wasn't there. He got there a day later, but the report was saying that he was the one he was watching on FaceTime, even if he was not there um physically in the room. He was still aware of what was going on.
Wow. Okay. We'll go back to the timeline. That was October the 29th. So, according to the Charlotte Observer, an hour later, Shanquella suffers a seizure and eventually stops breathing. CPR was unsuccessful. The police arrives. The doctor declares her deceased at some point around that time, unfortunately.
Mm. And this is where a lot of the conflicts have come in as well, because if I remember correctly, the initial autopsy report, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it stated that she died from an alcohol overdose. Um, no, no, it was the autopsy report. And then I believe a second autopsy was done, and it showed that she died from injuries to a broken spinal cord and broken neck.
Yeah, we have it all laid out in this timeline because there
Okay.
are there are conflicts between the death certificate and the police report.
Yes, that's what I'm referring
Yeah,
to.
big conflicts. And as we move through the timeline, we'll discuss what those conflicts are. And you're right on point. The cause of death on both of those, the cause and the times of death on both of those documents were, contradictory. All right, so let's go back to the timeline. So, as you said, Chloe, within 24 hours of reaching Cabo, sadly, Shanquella was dead.
Yeah,
So,
it's sad.
sometime late October, early November, the other persons return to Charlotte and they visit her family. And they tell the family that Shanquella died from alcohol poisoning. All of this is according to the Charlotte Observer. But the family doesn't believe their story because of inconsistencies. Now, again, this to me sort of points out why these other people may actually be charged too, because it almost sounds like a conspiracy, right?
Mhm.
Like all of them have put together a story, and that, if nothing else, could be accessory after the fact to what has happened. So I wouldn't be surprised if not only the person who did the beating, but all of them are eventually prosecuted, if they're prosecuted. We're going to talk about the hurdle of getting a prosecution in this case, but it probably will happen because, from what I'm understanding, the U.S. government is putting a lot of pressure on Mexico to solve this, murder.
Yeah. And also too that I the same interview I was listening to with Bernard Robinson, Shanquella's father, in addition to the inconsistencies that the friends were telling the parents, it was the fact that they went to the parents and he brought this out. He said they were eating their food, sitting at their dinner table, and they believed the friends were telling them lies. And the various inconsistencies that they got from the police report, the autopsy, and then the friends at that dinner table, that's what led the parents to believe that this was, like you said, a conspiracy and this was murder. And she did not just die from alcohol poisoning. And his Shanquella's dad was saying, "Look, I'm not on social media. I go home, I work, or provide for my family, and that's it." But it was at that point where they started to get the media involved about what happened to Shanquella.
Yeah. I'll go back and watch that interview because just listening to you recount that as a father, as a girl dad, it's heartbreaking. It's hard to really hear it.
It
And my
is.
prayers go out to Mr. Robinson and his family and everybody involved. Shanquella's family in this matter, and I just pray and I suspect. You and I work these criminal cases. I really, really suspect that the truth is going to come out because other people, those so-called friends of her, when the pressure is coming down and they're facing some consequences, they tend to start talking. We know on the streets they say snitches get stitches, and but that goes out the window when people facing 25, 30, 40, 50 years. They start talking big time
In a foreign country.
in a foreign country. Yes, exactly. Exactly. All right. So, all right, back to the timeline. That's late October, early November, November 5th. And here's what you were alluding to: the death certificate is issued that determines Shanquella died from severe spinal cord and neck injuries. And the death certificate doesn't mention anything about alcohol poisoning, like you said. So, go ahead.
So my question then is, I've kind of researched the legal system and law enforcement system in Mexico, and I've read where um, sometimes bribing law enforcement in Mexico can work on the behave on the behalf of people who need it. So I wonder what was going on with the Mexican police, where in their police report they put that she died from alcohol poisoning, yet the autopsy comes back and shows that there were, those injuries that we just discussed. It doesn't make sense why the discrepancy is so different. Now we know maybe at the time of the police report, the autopsy had not been done. But it's just very curious to me that the consistencies are so different than what the autopsy and death certificate said once they got it on November 5th, which is what a week after her death. So that stands out to me. Does that stand out to you, Dad?
Yes, a lot of stuff stands out here, and
Yeah.
it's the reason why we want to talk about this because when you go into these foreign countries, um, especially some of these countries that are unstable and have all types of crimes going on,
Hmm.
You can't even trust the police.
Yes.
I mean, you literally cannot trust the police. So we don't know that anybody took a bribe. We don't know if the doctor was bribed or the police officers or the hotel staff. We don't know. But it is very suspect that this death certificate is going to be quite different from the police report that's going to come out. And we're going to highlight some of that. So, yeah, that certainly stands out.
Yeah.
Everything is on the table at this point until,
Everything.
yeah,
And I'm
until,
sure it is for her parents, which is why they're fighting so hard at this point now too,
exactly.
trying to get justice for Shanquella.
Um, I'm on the Charlotte Observer's website, and we're going to pull that up here in a moment.
And let's give a shout out to the local news stations. They've been doing a lot of good reporting about Shanquella's death. Um, I've read a lot of the local news stations in out of North Carolina, and the reporting has been excellent from what I've seen. So we got to give a shout out to them and for the attention that they've shown this case as well. That Shanquella being a young black woman, again, we know that a lot of times our lives are not as valuable when we die, but this case has been different.
Even here in America.
Even yes, even here in America, but this has been different, and I appreciate that.
All right. So, ready to go back to the timeline?
Yes.
All right. That's November 5th. We just read what this death certificate says. November 11th, Shanquella's family speaks out and they contact the FBI. So, they're all over social media keeping their baby's um, murder in the spotlight and sort of forcing um, main media to take it seriously. And a lot of times, main media only takes seriously what's being taken seriously on social media,
Yep.
right? So social media is really what's driving this thing. And then main media says, oh, okay, people paying attention to this on social media. So I guess we need to follow suit.
Yeah.
So shout out to the parents for doing their due diligence to make sure their baby's murder is thoroughly investigated.
Yeah. We've seen that ourselves with cases that we handle, police brutality cases, other civil rights cases. You really have to focus a lot of times with those cases on social media and getting public outrage to get the shakers and movers doing things and reporting about what happens, especially to minority people.
It was Abraham Lincoln who famously said many years ago that if you want to win in the court of the law, you first must win in the court of public opinion.
Mm, that's
And it
so even more true today.
yes, exactly.
Honest Abe.
Honest Abe, he laid it out there. So and 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 think about the fact that this was videotaped,
Yeah.
the beating, the crime was literally videotaped and put on social media. And and think about it. Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. Um, one of the worst that comes to mind, one of the first that comes to mind of how videotaping and media and all that really plays a part was the beating of Rodney King.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not social media back then as much, but the fact that it was caught on videotape. Well, today you catch it on videotape and then put it on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. It catches traction fast. And cases, and it forces the authorities and the media to take these cases more seriously.
And that goes back to your point So the videotape is okay, you have her so-called friends filming this,
Chloe,
which is
you just broke up, so we missed what the first thing you just said just then.
oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back now.
Okay, come on, AT&T, work now.
Yeah,
Paying all
right.
this money, come on. But
Exactly.
what I was saying is this goes back to what you were talking about snitching
Hmm.
because in regards to the videotape, my first question is one, who filmed it? And two, how did it leak to the media? I think that whoever leaked it is probably this is just pure speculation, but it could have been one of Shanquella's so-called friends, and they may try to use that as leverage if they're charged criminally to try to go after the person who was beating Shanquella in the video. I think that if I were representing one of the friends, if they are charged, that is one thing that I would do. Well, my client, released the video. My client is cooperating. We will help assist. We will assist with the prosecution of the person who actually beat Shanquella. So that could be something that whoever leaked it could be advised about as well, if it is in fact a friend who was who leaked the video. Because I would not be surprised with the way that social media is now that video was probably sent to their circle of friends
Mm,
and was circulating within the friends before it even hit social media.
mm,
Because
mm,
why
mm,
else would you videotape? Why else would a so-called friend, and there were men there too who did nothing? That makes me even more mad. Film it. They're not going to keep that to themselves. I'm sure that that was sent out and circulating before it even went widespread on social media.
mm.
It's just sickening.
Well, that's the first thing people do nowadays. Back when this young man Takeoff, the rapper, was killed, well, within minutes, my understanding is the video of him lying there dying began circulating on social media. People
Yeah.
walking over him with their cameras out.
Yeah. So even though it's kind of sickening how everything is posted on social media, like you said before, this case may not have gotten the attention it's gotten if it were not for the video and the video being posted on social media.
And speaking of social media, the timeline, November 14th, Shaquella's family says someone provided them with photos showing injuries to Shanquella's face, which prove there had been a physical altercation in Mexico. So
Mm,
someone, and like you said, maybe it was one of the so-called friends who is trying to say, hey, this is not really what happened. In fact, I remember reading a week or two ago, one of the persons who went over there with her said, I'm not going to participate in what's been happening. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to let the family know what really happened. So someone in this crowd is I believe people in the crowd are already cooperating. And good for them.
yeah.
Good for them. Good for them, as you said, good for them morally, right? They should have done more to stop it, but at least now come back and help the family get justice. And good for them legally because, as you pointed out, they're, they may be able to say, well, while I didn't help um, her out, I did step up and would not participate in the cover up.
Yeah.
And that
Yep.
is worth something.
It
And I'm
is.
sure the family appreciates that if that indeed is happening.
So again, this is all circulating on social media. It's it's getting out there. Shanquella's family is still searching for answers. And then November 16th, as you see on the screen, a video surfaces.
Hmm.
And like I said before, I believe this video really changed the narrative to get people's attention on this case. It shows a woman beating another woman who's nude, and a man is heard telling the victim to fight back. And a voice is heard saying no. And Shanquella's mother, Salamandra Robinson, confirms that the nude woman was her daughter. And like we said before, that video is heartbreaking and tragic. But it is the turning point, I believe, to getting the media involved as well as the authorities as well. The starting point. Because it's just so shocking just to see that.
All right, November 17th, Mexican authorities confirmed they're investigating Shanquella's death as a possible femicide. According to the Black's Law Dictionary, femicide is the killing of a woman. We don't use that term here in America. We For us it's either homicide or suicide, um, natural causes. We don't use the term femicide. So I had to. I mean, with the prefix fem, I mean I knew basically what it meant, but I wanted to know what it meant legally. And media outlets had put on social media, had put on their websites that, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, well, as attorneys, we don't go to Merriam-Webster's dictionary. We go to the law.
The
And
penal
so
code.
what? Say it again.
We go to the penal code.
Yes, we go to the penal code or case law. My first stop was Webster's, pardon me, Black's Law Dictionary, which is quite often quoted and used by judges in their opinions. Um, so I went there first, and then I also searched LexisNexis to see if any cases had used the term femicide, and I couldn't find one case, Chloe, where the word femicide was used when a woman was murdered. So again, it's not a popular word in our jurisprudence, but uh, uh, again, the Black's Law Dictionary defines it as the killing of a woman. Now, I read an interesting twist. One media outlet says Merriam-Webster's dictionary says it's the killing of a woman by a man. I don't know
Mm.
if you saw that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's what one. I think maybe it was the Charlotte Observer. Merriam-Webster says it's the killing of a woman by a man. Wow. Now that that's a twist in this case, right? If that's true, if that's what the Mexicans authority means, when Mexican authorities mean when they say femicide, are they suggesting that the person who killed Shanquella was a man? That's a big twist because we saw with our own eyes a woman beating Shanquella in that video. So did a man also participate in that to the degree that this was done by a man? I don't know. We need to see what the arrest warrant actually says and who's actually charged.
Yeah, man, that's interesting. Because like we said, we only saw that one video. We don't know what happened before or after that even led to Shanquella getting in the state that she was in, where she was nude and slumped over, and it seemed almost non-responsive to me, except for when she said no to fighting back. So there could be um, more beatings or more causes that would have led to Shanquella's death than what was just in the video as well. And I'm sure, like you said before, other associates of Shanquella have been speaking with the authorities. There's a lot of pressure on them, on Mexico, to do a thorough investigation because keep in mind, a lot of Americans go to Mexico for vacation.
That's right.
And I'm sure that's playing into this factor here now with this arrest warrant coming out, charges being filed. A lot of Mexico's economy is based on tourism from America. So they need to be shown as taking this very seriously so that their economy is not affected either.
That's right. All right. November 18th, the FBI confirmed its independent investigation of Shanquella's death and the family launched a GoFundMe page to which Kyrie Irving donated more than $50,000. We certainly wanted to. We applaud the FBI, and we need to talk about that a little bit here because we applaud the FBI for getting involved, but there isn't much the FBI can do. I mean, the FBI has no jurisdiction south of the border, none.
Yep.
Right? It has to work through Mexican authorities. Now, what, as you said, what we do have is the power of the purse, right? We do have, Mexico does want to keep good relations with the country because a lot of dollars flow from America down to Mexico. So if the FBI is applying the pressure and the Secretary of State um, are applying the pressure to Mexico to get to the bottom of this, then they're going to respond to that. And, so, um, but the FBI has no direct jurisdiction down there. Why am I mentioning that? Because the truth of the matter is, when we travel internationally, we take a risk. We take a risk if something happens. We take for granted all the time all the laws that protect us. Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, Seventh Amendment, Eighth Amendment, on and on and on. First Amendment, Second Amendment. And we argue these amendments and we use these amendments to argue for our clients, but they mean nothing south of the border or even north of the border, Canada or Mexico. So when we travel abroad like that, just keep in mind, which is why we're going to give you some things for you to keep in mind, that we're really taking a risk.
Yep. We are.
And the GoFundMe page, let me just say this real quick, Chloe. We wanted to put that up there because the family has asked for assistance. A lot of money has been raised so far, from what I understand, almost $400,000. And reportedly, Kyrie Irving chipped in quite a bit of money. I read $50,000 from one report, $65,000 in another report. But yes, if you want to support the family, I think you can go to GoFundMe website and probably just type in Shanquella Robinson and help the family. Of course, be aware of scams and all that. Other people may have created accounts and so forth. So be aware of that, and that's sort of a disclaimer on our part. Sure, if you choose to help, please do, but keep in mind there are risks.
Yep. Make sure you go to the official GoFundMe pages. You can look for representation from Shanquella's parents in their social media pages. That's probably the best source to find the accurate GoFundMe page on her behalf.
Do the parents have social media pages?
I don't know if the dad does. I believe the mom may.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'll see if I can find it and pull it up here in a few.
Okay.
All right. Want to go back to the timeline? We're coming to the end of it.
Yes. Hmm.
All right. That's November 18th. That's also the day that the family funeralizes Shanquella. And this is a picture reportedly from her funeral. And we can't verify any of this information. And let us also say that all of the people, these 6 people here, are all presumed innocent. Okay, every one of them is presumed innocent at this point, even if they're arrested and charged and indicted or whatever. They are, at least under our law. I have to keep saying that. At least under American law, they are presumed innocent. I don't know what happens in Mexico. Okay, I don't know the law down there. I don't know if you have the presumption of innocence or not. I don't know. That may not be true down there, but here it is true.
And Mexico is the one that has jurisdiction to prosecute this case for, well, generally, we're going to discuss once we finish the timeline about extradition and whether or not the federal government could potentially prosecute these acquaintances. So stay tuned for that too.
Okay, timeline again. So may she rest in peace. She was funeralized November 18th. And you said it so well early on, Chloe, when you said that we all just celebrated Thanksgiving, but a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving for this family, Shanquella
Yeah.
was not at the dinner table with them.
Yep.
And so Thanksgiving was just completely destroyed for this family this year. And I had a family member, my oldest brother, to die a week before Christmas, 1980. And that Christmas was just horrible. And every Christmas since then, I think about him. December 18th, 1980. So this family is really going to need our prayers to get through this. All
Let's
right.
get,
Go ahead.
we didn't do this at the top of the hour, but maybe we can give a 15-second moment of silence for Shanquella.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you
And
all for
Dad,
doing that with us.
thank
Yes.
you. You mentioned us not knowing about whether or not Mexico had a presumption of innocence.
Yes.
I did a little research. Up
Okay.
until 2016, they had a you're guilty until proven innocent in
Wow.
Mexico.
Wow.
Then a constitutional amendment came and changed all of that.
So under their constitution prior to 2016,
Hmm.
you were officially guilty, and then you had to prove your innocence.
Hmm. According to Fronteras Desk, the amendment called for a presumption of innocence instead of a presumption of guilt for individuals who have been arrested.
Wow.
So that's what changed. Before the amendment, Mexico's criminal justice system assumed that the defendant was guilty.
Man, you don't
And
know
it
how
also
I'm.
called for just equality between the defense and the prosecution, because before, the prosecution's investigation was not very accessible to the defense. Here in Texas, under the Michael Morton Act, the prosecution has to give everything to the defense, exculpatory, inculpatory, everything. We have an open file policy here. So I mean, just reading that, up until just a few years ago, their system it was completely different.
So again, that's why I said you take a risk to travel
Yeah,
internationally. You take a
yeah.
serious risk. If you get in there and get out, get back to America without any issues, and all you have to do is think about Brittany Griner, right? Uh,
You took the words out my mouth. I was literally about to say that.
yes, I mean that he or she allegedly had a little bit of CBD oil, right? A
Mm,
little CBD oil, and for that, she is in a penal colony, they call it, for 10, 11, 12 years.
mm.
No due process rights, none of that. Just be mindful when you travel outside of this country. Americans, we are used to all these rights. You don't get them in these other places. And the more unstable these places are, the worse. And if you're black, right? If you're black, it's even worse. I mean, sometimes even here in America, we don't get our due process rights and be, treated equally under the law. Can you imagine in some country that doesn't like black people and whose laws are tilted toward the government? Just be very mindful. And we're going to give you some things to help you.
Just insert just a little levity. When you were talking about 10, 11, 12 years, you sounded straight from No Cracky like that. I was trying not to laugh though.
Ooh.
And he said 10, 11, 12 years.
Is that how I said it? 10, 11, 12 years.
Straight out of
Oh.
North Carolina, man.
Oh boy. Oh man, look, I am a country boy. Straight up, point blank country boy.
Yeah.
Country boy. Put it that way. Not just country, country boy. All right. So yeah, 10, 11, 10, 11, 12. This is I hate this is not a laughing situation,
It's
but
not a
like Chloe
laughing at
said,
all.
just a little levity here. I
Yeah.
can only imagine how I may have sounded to some of you out there from New York and Philadelphia and from other places listening to me. I'm a country boy. I'm proud of it. Proud of it. Country boy
Yeah.
from North Carolina. And by the
So,
way, that's another reason why this, uh, as you said earlier, Chloe, this really touches us because she's from Charlotte. She's from our home state. She was from Charlotte. The family's from North Carolina.
grandma lived in Charlotte.
Wow.
So,
Okay. Timeline. And by the way, I see we got a thumbs down. What's that all about?
we got a thumbs down.
Yeah, I got a thumbs down for some reason.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Go ahead, Chloe.
November 18th.
Mm-hmm.
So, at this point, again, Shanquella died October 28th. We're almost a month from her death. The Mexican prosecutor releases the police report, which again contradicts some parts of the death certificate. We've discussed some of the conflicts. We'll continue to look at more, but there are huge conflicts between the police report and the death certificate and autopsy that was done on the case as well. November 25th, the Mexican prosecutor, I think his name is Daniel de la Rosa Anaya, he issued an arrest warrant for one of the persons who traveled to Mexico with Shanquella. So that is what a lot of people were calling for, Dad, for an arrest warrant to be issued, for charges to be filed. And on that day, on Thanksgiving, that arrest warrant was issued. Again, we don't know who the arrest warrant was against, who the person they're seeking to arrest, and we don't know the affidavit, if they do that in Mexico, that would be attached with the warrant on why they want the arrest warrant to be issued. But we do know there was one issued, as well as that same prosecutor said that they reached out to Interpol because there's an international police force that 100 plus member countries are a part of, and there's procedures when one country wants to prosecute another country's citizen. So they reached out to Interpol. They did what they were supposed to do. And now they're trying to extradite the person that they named the arrest warrant back to Mexico to face those charges. So that is where we're at now.
All right. So, speaking of the extradition treaty between Mexico and the United States of America, there is one, and it's pretty old. It was actually signed by Abraham Lincoln back in 1861. And it reads in pertinent part: the United States of America and the United Mexican States have judged it expedient, with a view to the better administration of justice and to the prevention of crime within their respective territories and jurisdictions, that persons charged with the crimes hereinafter enumerated and being fugitives from justice should, under certain circumstances, be reciprocally uh, delivered up, have resolved to conclude a treaty for this purpose, and have named as their respective plenipotentiaries, that is to say, their presidents, basically. Um, so, yes, there is an extradition treaty between Mexico and the United States of America. And the Mexican authorities have indeed, and we've used it, right? There have been times where there have been certain drug traffickers, for example, who the federal government here would say, hey, since you got this person in custody, we'd like to have this person here for crimes committed against America. And so Mexico is saying, okay, um, you have these persons within your jurisdiction, or this person. I believe it will eventually be more people. We would like for you to turn that person over to us. Certain conditions must be met, but there is that extradition treaty. And so this person may end up in Mexico. Um,
Mhm.
Now, Chloe, as you alluded to, uh, even if Mexico doesn't prosecute this person, our government can prosecute this person.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's look at that law, unless you have more to say about the extradition treaty.
Just that even within the United States, there's extradition agreements between the states as well. And a lot of times, at least here in Texas, if a person takes a plea deal, they agree to the extradition agreement between Texas and another state. So if they go to another state and they commit an offense there or vice versa, the each respective state can bring that person back to face the charges. So it's the very same thing that Mexico has with the United States and vice versa. And extradition just basically means that one state, one country can bring the citizen of another state or another country to face charges within that respective country. So that's what Mexico is trying to do now. So even though these people, we presume all of them were United States citizens, because they were in Mexico because of that extradition agreement, Mexico is saying, per that treaty that we signed back in the 1800s, that was, I think, ratified in like the 1970s, we need to bring them back here to Mexico to face these charges.
All right. Um, so let's look at the law that could result in them being prosecuted here.
And a lot of people don't realize this. So beware, bing, bing, bing. Even though this happened in Mexico because of this federal law, we'll get into it. They could be prosecuted here.
All right, I'll read it. Okay, so a person who being a national of the United States kills or attempts to kill a national of the United States while such national is outside the United States, but within the jurisdiction of another country, shall be punished as provided under sections 1111, 1112, and 1113. Now, before we comment on that further, let me point out that we don't have our country doesn't have extradition treaties with all other countries. So there are some countries that we could not say to them, all right, this person has committed a crime against uh, our laws. We are asking you to extradite them to America. And vice versa. They couldn't ask us to do the same. It doesn't mean it can't be done, but there's no treaty. There's no agreement to do it. There just happens to be one with Mexico, and it makes sense, right? There are, first of all, if you can go to some country and commit crimes down there and have no fear of ever being held accountable in America. In other words, you commit a crime in America and then you run to Mexico, right? I guess both countries, Mexico and America, said we don't want that. We don't want criminals committing crimes in your territory and then running down here and trying to run and hide. Although Mexico hasn't been the best extradition partner over the years, a lot of people have committed crimes, and that would be the first thing they would do: head south of the border. I mean, but there is the treaty. We don't have that with every country, so a wise thing to do, in my opinion, is to check that before you travel to a country. We're going to give you some other things, but check the extradition laws to see if there is an extradition treaty between America and the country that you're traveling to.
Yeah.
Because if you go down there and somebody commit a crime against you, like they did Shanquella, then America wouldn't even have the authority to get that person extradited back here. All right. So, you know, just check that.
And in the movies, you always see, you know, um, you always see someone run into another country to escape the prosecution of America or some type of law enforcement here. So think of extradition in that way. You know, some spy does something in the US. In the movies, they always end up in some foreign country to try to escape prosecution or whatever. So that's basically what extradition is. And whether or not we have an agreement with that country would dictate whether or not America could bring the person back and face charges here in America or vice versa here in that country.
All right. So even if there's not an extradition treaty between America and some country, America still has the authority under our law to yet prosecute a person. So let's talk about that. Let's go back to that statute. A person who being a national of the United States kills or attempts to kill a national of the United States, while such national is outside the United States, but within the jurisdiction of another country, shall be punished as provided under 1111, 1112, and 1113. So the central question here is, who are United States nationals,
Mhm.
right? Because that's what this says. If you're a United States national and you kill another United States national in another country, America still can prosecute you. So the question is, who is a United States national? And here's the answer.
According to the INA, nationals of the United States includes all US citizens. So anyone who is a US citizen is a US national, as well as persons who, though not citizens of the United States, owe permanent allegiance to the United States. So those are called non-citizen nationals. So all United States citizens are nationals, as well as anyone who owe permanent allegiance to the US as well. So it could even include someone who's not a United States citizen, but if they kill or attempt to kill a United States citizen in a country where we have in a foreign country, then that person could be prosecuted here in the United States federally.
All right, so under the facts of this situation, all six of these people are presumably U.S. citizens, which makes them U.S. nationals. And so they fit squarely in this statute. So even if the Mexican authorities do not prosecute whoever is accountable and responsible for Shanquella's death, then the Department of Justice, if certain conditions are met, the Department of Justice can prosecute that person here for the death of Shanquella in Mexico.
With several limitations though.
Yes.
Yeah. What people don't realize is that with the law there's a lot of if A then B except C, D, E, and F. So we're about to get into the exceptions now or the limitations. Can you put that back on the screen? Oh yeah. Yep. So before prosecution can be initiated for someone who is a US national who kills another national while outside the United States, first the attorney general, the deputy attorney general, or the assistant attorney general must give written approval. So you have to get approval from the AG, the deputy AG, or the assistant AG. Okay. And also, if the foreign country has already prosecuted the alleged killer for the same conduct, then you can't get approval from those people. Therefore, the United States cannot prosecute that person here in the United States. So the question for Shanquella's case is one, when are when is this person going to be extradited? If they're not extradited, at what point would a criminal prosecution be conducted in Mexico? And if it is conducted or not conducted, when will the AG or the other persons give approval for the prosecution to be here in the United States? So there's several questions that need to be determined before deciding whether or not the United States can prosecute the person who did this to Shanquilla
Or people who did it.
or people. Yeah, we
'Cause
gotta. I'm so glad you keep reminding us of that. People. I agree with you, Dad, that there are probably going to be multiple charges against multiple people involved as well.
it wouldn't surprise me at all, really. Chloe, some of the some of the discrepancies that you were bringing out between the death certificate and the police report. Let's go to that. I'm going to bring up my iPad. Hope this works. Hope this works. Okay, there it
Yep,
is.
we see it.
Okay. All right. So you see it, right?
We got it.
Okay. Let me enlarge it some. Okay.
So, what killed Shanquella Robinson? The death certificate resulting from an autopsy lists the official cause of death as quote severe spinal cord injury and atlas luxation. So I looked up atlas luxation. Again, guys, you all know we're lawyers, not doctors, and we would get a medical expert to help us with this. But from what I can tell, it's a form of a neck injury. So that's atlas luxation. Um, and in a box for information about whether the death was accidental or violent, the form simply says, quote, yes.
And when I read that, I'm like, well, which is it? Accidental
Yeah.
or violent?
And again, all of these are also in Spanish and they're having to be translated to English, is my understanding.
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
So both the police report and the death certificate were both in Spanish and they were translated to English. So um also the police report doesn't assign a cause of death, but says the reason 911 was called was due to quote deceased person cardiopulmonary arrest,
It's
end
like a
quote.
heart attack.
Mm. Neither record states unequivocally that Robinson was drunk or had alcohol poisoning. On the
Like
deaths,
the so-called friends said.
exactly. Yep. On the death certificate, there's no box to check for information about alcohol or other substance. In the police report, the doctor observes Robinson had, quote, stable vital signs, but was dehydrated, unable to communicate verbally, and appearing to be inebriated, end quote. So
So
those are the
so before we move on,
mhm,
so she actually died by spinal cord injury and neck injuries, basically.
mhm,
So the doctor was not able to, he didn't know what was happening inside her body. He was just looking at her there. And what he classified as being inebriated, which means drunk, highly intoxicated, was really her inability to move
mhm,
and her serious internal injuries that he could have gotten a better picture of had he taken her to the hospital,
Hmm.
right? Because had he taken her to the hospital, I would assume that they would have done X-rays, MRIs, CAT scans, EKGs, EEGs, and would have seen there's no brain activity or there's a severed spinal cord or neck injuries or what have you. It was really, really, really a serious failure not to get her to the hospital. I mean, really. And for 3
And I
hours, if she
wonder.
it
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That.
no, go ahead. I was just gonna say, if she was indeed alive for 3 hours,
Mm,
that was wasted time.
yeah.
I mean, she was probably lying there unable to breathe
Mm.
because of the spinal cord injury, couldn't, exhale, inhale. I don't know, I'm speculating. And here those folks, so-called friends, misled the doctor into thinking she's just intoxicated. I really don't see how they not have some culpability here.
And I wonder why she was just not taken to the hospital regardless. Um, I guess the doctors were just relying on what these people were telling them. But here in America, I'm trying to think under Texas law. I mean, we you have to give aid. So I don't know. That doesn't sit well with me either. I feel like more could have been done with the by the doctor as well. Is what I'm saying.
That absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. As you alluded to earlier, I mean, was some bribing going on here? I mean, because yeah, you're right. Here, you wouldn't have gotten serious injuries like that. I think the EMS folks would have said, "Nah, we're taking her." They would have gotten vital signs and all of that, and said, "Nah, out of the abundance of safety, caution, we're taking her on to the hospital." She and 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 what's unusual too is for a doctor to show up at a crime scene, unless it's the medical examiner. Usually, it's just EMS workers who just pick the person up and transport them to the hospital where they can get the appropriate care. It's weird, to say, "Hey, just leave her in the hotel and try to treat her at the hotel." That is very, very strange and weird.
Well, we don't know what type of emergency system they have in Mexico.
Well, you would
Um,
think this is a hotel resort, right? This
yeah.
is a place to deal with a lot of travelers, as you pointed out earlier, right? Folks are coming to this city, Cabo, Mexico, all the time for vacation. You would think they got some of the better emergency services. Otherwise, people need to think twice about going.
Well, the hotel is probably thinking about liability and trying to protect itself as well. There
Well,
could be
true,
a
but
civil cause of action.
absolutely. Good luck on that. I mean, for the same reasons we're cautioning you all not to depend on criminal laws of these foreign countries. You definitely don't want to depend on suing them and all that. Um, but if you're going to think liability, do everything you can to save the person's life.
Period. Yeah. I mean,
Again, we're not, we're not trying to scare anybody. Just these are just legal things that you need to think about when you're traveling internationally. All
yeah.
right, we'll go back to the iPad.
So, what happened in Cabo? Video footage showing an attack where a woman believed to be Robinson is severely beaten inside a bedroom is part of the ongoing law enforcement investigation. The footage shows Robinson not fighting back and falling to the ground. We discussed that in our timeline. Also, Cabo police records show Robinson received medical treatment for nearly 3 hours from doctors, and paramedics. So they did come before she was pronounced dead, according to this report. In that time, she experienced a seizure. And according to the police report excerpt, her friends refused to have her transported to a medical facility and told the doctor she drank too much alcohol and needed an IV.
Stop right
That
there.
just makes me mad.
Yeah,
That
and but the thing too is who is lying? Isn't the medical doctors, the paramedics in the hotel, as you pointed out, could be lying, and the police.
yeah,
The friends, who knows whether the friends said no, treat her here at the hotel.
that's
That
true.
sounds
They could.
that's that sounds suspect to me because who's going to be taking medical advice from friends?
That's true.
I mean,
That's true.
that sounds weird.
They could be trying to cover stuff up from themselves. They, again, this is a young black woman. They may have just come out that done a cursory examination and left it at that. Even if it was for 3 hours, as they reported, we don't know if it was for 3 hours either. Again, guys, there is a lot of unknowns and a lot of information that we don't know either.
How tell me, if somebody explain to me how doctors and paramedics are going to arrive to a potential crime scene or an accident scene and treat somebody there for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So they think about that. 3 hours. Here, you get folks to the hospital.
Yep.
That's what 911 is about. It's emergency. It is getting people to the hospital where there are instruments, equipment, specialized doctors, ER doctors, heart doctors, brain doctors, bone doctors who can get this person some help and potentially save their lives. That's weird. It I discount that. Somebody could very well be lying here. Either it is a huge cover up. Either let me say it this way. Even if the friends, so-called friends, told them to no treat her here at the hotel, still the doctors and paramedics, if this is true, they still messed up real bad for
Yeah.
taking medical advice from these people.
Yeah. Something fishy's going on.
All right. iPad.
The death certificate says she was found in a living room. It doesn't mention alcohol. The document doesn't expand much about what happened leading up to her death, but says she died within 15 minutes of the onset of fatal injuries. That's another inconsistency. The
All right.
police report
Let's
said that they treated her for 3 hours. This says
exactly.
15 minutes.
Exactly. Exactly.
In a box that asks whether medical attention was provided before the death, the document says unknown. And then her family has said multiple friends gave conflicting accounts. And once a doctor had been summoned to the villa, the friends called her mother, claiming Robinson had alcohol poisoning. No official record yet released has shown authorities deemed alcohol to be the leading cause of Robinson's death. The death certificate says she died at 3 p.m. on October 29th. Her mother has said in previous interviews that she was called after an ambulance had arrived at the villa and told Robinson was extremely ill but still alive. A police record indicates 911 had been called at 4:20 p.m. The police report excerpt says the doctor discovered no pulse for Robinson at 4:49 p.m. That's another inconsistency. The death certificate says 3 p.m. The police report is saying 4:49 there was no pulse, and after a long stretch of CPR, the police report pronounced Robinson dead at 5:57 p.m.
Yeah, and another inconsistency is the death certificate says she died at 3 p.m., whereas the police report indicates that 911 wasn't even called until 4:20 p.m.
Yeah. And
So
again,
the
what you pointed out before is that neither document says for sure that she even had alcohol in her system. So they agree on that one point from what we can see.
so the two documents that if we were representing someone either criminally or civilly, the two critical essential documents contradict each other. The death certificate contradicts the police report. The police report contradicts the death certificate. So you got an uphill battle right here, right? You don't know who to believe. Somebody's lying. Both can't be true. You don't, I mean, if she died at 3 p.m., according to the death certificate, yet 911 wasn't even called until 9:11. I mean, the only other possibility for that is the coroner is saying, well, she actually died at 3 p.m. and the friends didn't call until 4:20 p.m. Now that's another possibility, right?
Yeah.
That would even more strongly implicate the so-called friends. But
Yeah.
there's so many discrepancies here, and I guess it sort of takes us back to the point of this whole podcast today, not only to grieve and honor the life and death of Shanquella Robinson and to express our condolences and support for her family, but also to warn people about the risk we take when we travel to these countries. And so, Chloe, I think this is a good time to start sort of laying out some basic things that we think folks can do to increase the safety of these international trips.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. So we've compiled a list for our listeners, just some tips that we have to make sure that you and your loved ones are safe when traveling internationally. Number
Let
one
me
on the list.
let me see if I can pull it up
Okay.
on the technology is something, man.
We got that tech, guys.
That tech. Okay, here it is. All right.
Now, we see some portions of
I know.
your
I'm
text
trying to
messages that so.
now look at what happened. Bragging on the tech and just took you to my iPad. All right. So go ahead and talk a minute. Let me get that iPad set up.
Okay. So I'll just go ahead and start with the first tip that we have, which is check the COVID-19 protocol, because there are still some countries that are not open, that have not opened its borders. The last time I had checked, um, Japan had not fully opened its border, I don't believe. Um, and there's some other countries as well. You also might be required to have a COVID-19 test and any other protocol that that country has. So that's the first tip that we have. Check the COVID-19 protocol. The second one is to do some research on your travel destination. And the type of research we're talking about is whatever hotel or wherever you decide to stay. There it is. Number two, do some research on your travel destination. Check into how safe the hotel, the Airbnb is, or the villa or resort. Um, check into crime that the crime rate in the area that you'll be staying. Sometimes what I like to do is go on Google Maps and kind of just take a look around in the area that I'm staying as well. You just want to do some recon. You want to do some research and really investigate and look into where you're staying. Anything you want to chime in with those two? That
No, that's good. Um,
okay.
very, very important.
Number three. Visit the State Department. The State Department can be a
Website.
wealth of
Website.
information.
You said visit the
Yes.
State Department. Visit the State Department's website.
Oh, the website. Yeah, not the don't go in person. Go to the website. So the State Department, it is the one that is it's responsible for our foreign policy, our relations, but they do things with US passports. They usually have travel advisories when going to certain countries. Um I'm looking at one now and there's a travel advisory for Mexico. And dad, I don't know if you know this, but there was also one for Haiti about African Americans going to not Haiti, African Americans going to Puerto Rico. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Dominican Republic. That is the country that's right beside Haiti because Dominican Republic officials are collecting up dark skinned black people and transporting them to Haiti.
Wow.
So there was an advisory that was issued about that.
So that's
So
like slavery, basically.
yeah, and discrimination and stereotyping, it's bad. So the State Department has a lot of good information that you can visit their website about to try to get that information. Let me go to the next one. Number 4, get your required immunizations. Determine if you need an international driver permit if you want to drive around. Consider purchasing travel insurance if something gets lost or stolen. That could be helpful. Inform your bank you're traveling abroad so there won't be any problems with using your cards. I've heard this happens a lot. So make sure your cards work. Know how to access local currency. Don't
It,
travel with any. Mhm.
well, this is just so good because we traveled internationally as a family in 20, was it 18 or 19?
Yeah.
Which one?
18.
We went to Cuba
Mhm.
and, a very a tremendous country, very peaceful country. It is a dictatorship. There are a lot of issues in Cuba, a lot of people we met who are being stifled and controlled by socialism down there, communism. Um, but the people are great, great people. And we had to do all this stuff here, you know, proper immunization. Um, we weren't thinking about driving, so we didn't check into that. But travel insurance, all of this, we did every bit of this. And if you remember, Chloe, I was real, real, real on top of everything because I remember telling our tour guide over there, I said, look, put my finger in his face. I said, look, everybody who's dear to me in the world, the most dearest people to me in the world, are right here. My wife and 2 children. Don't you try me, dude. If you guide us, you better not guide us into any snags. Now, truth of the matter is, we were on the mercy of God and pretty much on his mercy because what could I do if he tried to do something? It's just by God's grace, he was a good guy. Brother William, still remember Brother William. Good dude, good dude.
Still keep in touch with them to this day.
Yes. But yeah, but my point is I was really, really taking all this stuff seriously because I know already, having traveled internationally before then. I've been to Africa, I've been to Eastern Europe, I've been to Mexico a couple of times. How important these things are. But go ahead.
Yes. Don't travel with any prohibited items or materials. Remember, keep Brittany Griner in mind.
That's right.
Make sure you have identification. Make sure you have your passport and your visa.
Have all that stuff
Some
straightened out.
yes. Sometimes, the passport is important, especially if you need to go to US embassy or something like that. Um, give your family a copy of your itinerary so that including your lodging, so they know where you're at.
Now, as a parent, I want to chime in right here because you and Caleb hear me say these things all the time. And we kind of had to get on Caleb a little bit because with his photography business, he would just end up somewhere. You know, I'm like, what are you doing down? Why we don't know that you're down there, my man? I mean, what just had to chew him out a little bit. Um, and because if something happens, who you think gonna be the ones having to try to figure everything out? And we don't even know. We don't even know where you are. We think you're over in Dallas and you down in Timbuktu. I mean, yeah. So I'm calling Caleb out on thing here. He's probably laughing if he's listening.
It's important though.
Yeah, these are the other things were kind of legal, health related, but this stuff here is personal that are really important. Give your family, just email them a copy of your itinerary so your family knows where you are pretty much at all times and what your schedule is. Have a
And
good
that
time, but let
yeah.
the ones who love you know what's going on.
And that was important with getting, with Shanquella's parents working to get justice for her. They were right on top of it. They already knew where she was at. They flew down to Mexico. There was no, okay, where is she at? Where none of that. They were able to get on
Exactly.
top of it quickly
That's right.
because they knew. Call, text daily to check in with family. So make sure you check in with your family and friends. You heard in our timeline, Shanquella called as soon as she arrived in Mexico and spoke with her mom. And then she spoke with her throughout the day too.
That was smart.
Yeah, she was a smart young lady. Abide by all laws and customs.
Now, you said call, text daily. All right, some folks may say, now, come on, that's a little bit much. No, it isn't. Just, I mean, first of all, this is your family. They love you. They're, wondering, how things are going. Need to be over here praying for you. So just check in, just a text. Everything went good today. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Um, Call, whatever. Just let your family know that the day went well and nothing went awry.
Yeah. Yep. Avoid all alcohol and drugs.
Well, abide by all laws and customs.
Oh yeah, I said that.
What that needs to be highlighted.
Yeah, that does.
That needs to be highlighted.
Again, Brittany Griner.
That's the highlight of that. We pray that Brittany gets home soon. We pray she gets home soon. We really do. And we don't know. I don't even believe the Russian authorities that she did anything, to be honest with you. I don't take their word.
So,
This is a country that is unjustly just killing babies, women, children, and everything over in Ukraine. Ukraine. I don't believe anything that country says. That's a wicked country. So, but if she did, now I know in her court proceedings, I believe she confessed, but I don't know if she was just advised to confess so that she could try to get, you know, a lighter sentence or something. I don't know. I want to hear from her before I reach any conclusions. But yes, don't go to these countries, folks, and violate their laws.
mm-mm.
Don't go over there and smoke pot. Don't even, you know what? The guy who got released from Russia a few months ago, Chloe, he was charged with DWI, if I recall. He just went to jail for drinking. And it resulted in him going to prison and almost spending many, many, many years in prison for merely drinking alcohol. So I know this sounds draconian and whatever. My advice is don't even drink while you're in these countries. Definitely don't do drugs. But my personally, I wouldn't even drink. I don't drink anyway. But I'm saying if I did, I wouldn't be down there drinking. For somebody to walk up and say you drunk, you violating some code or something.
I'm
I'm
taking you
like,
in.
yeah, we're taking you in, and you don't see the sun for 10 years.
Mm,
No, I'm just saying.
it ain't worth all that. Come on. And
And I,
if traveling,
well, I just believe when you're an American and you go to these countries, you're already dealing with, like in Brittany's case, she's an American that not favored in Russia, right? She's a woman, not favored in Russian. She's black, not favored in Russian. And she's a lesbian, not favored in Russia. So we often go into these countries with these strikes against us in the first place.
yep,
So what do you think? It's hard for us to get equal rights here in the country where we uh, help build. Can you imagine going to these other places?
yep. Another thing, this is on the list, but I want to say it. Try to blend in and not
That's
just be a
good.
target, because a lot of times we go to different countries and we're just so American, and we have our Americanisms, and we have, this sense of almost entitlement. And you're in a foreign country subject to their laws. Follow their laws and their customs and blend in. Don't put a target on yourself as an American to be kidnapped or charged or any of this. Enjoy the culture for what it is, enjoy the customs, but don't have that sense of entitlement when you're in this foreign country. That's so important. So important. Okay, so we have a couple more. If traveling in a group, designate a spokesperson. That's important. And finally, again, it's all about communicating. Let family know when you're on your way back home. These are our tips for international traveling for the safety of you and your family. Okay? We want all of you all to be safe. But again, our hearts, prayers, thoughts, um, condolences go out to Shanquella's family and friends for her death. We pray that justice is served in this case and that the truth comes out and that an fair and adequate and thorough investigation is done so that this family can get the information and answers that they need. It's been a pleasure going over this with you despite the circumstances that.
Well, I want to leave on this too that um, the good news is there is an extradition treaty between Mexico and America.
Yeah.
So there is at least a possibility that whoever's responsible for Shanquella's death here in America will be extradited to Mexico. Now, keep in mind that that person and or people are presumed innocent so long as they are in our country. And if the prosecution breaks down and Mexico does not follow through, then our government can prosecute the responsible people for Shanquella's death here in America. So her family still has a very good chance of getting justice.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with people like you and me and Chloe keeping this in the media's bright lights and insisting that her family get answers and get justice. That's all I want to say, Chloe.
We thank you all for listening, for watching us each and every week. We have such great things planned for this channel. So we look forward to seeing you all next time.
Yeah, we weren't on last week. We had to do a little personal care time. Chloe and I are running and busy all the time. We said, hey, this is a week that we're gonna just relax. But
Yes.
thank you for coming back, like she said, and we got a lot more coming. That's it.
We do. Peace.
Peace. Peace.
Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. We out of here. Bye.